When jazz guitar comping masters like Jim Hall or Joe Pass played, they very rarely used large, blocky chords that you often find printed in jazz chord books. That wasn't how they thought about chords. Instead, they built their harmony around simple, small shapes that instantly allowed them both rhythmic and harmonic freedom, opening up the whole fretboard to a variety of possibilities and colors. My name is Nathan Borton, and I'm a professional jazz guitarist and educator that has spent the last decade helping students decode the jazz masters. In today's lesson, I'm going to show you the real way to learn jazz chords and transform your comping from frustrating static grips into beautiful flowing phrases. And to help you internalize all these concepts in this lesson, I've created guitar profiles for every example, along with a bonus etude to help you put these concepts into practice. You can find that all over on my Patreon linked below. Now let's decode the simple secret to jazz chord mastery. But first off, we need to understand that when playing jazz chords, everything is essentially built around what is often called a shell voicing. This shell is the core of what makes any chord sound like itself, which is always the third of the chord combined with the 7. And you can play them either way, being the third on top and then the 7, or the 7 on top and then the third. Doing this builds the foundation for free flowing chordal lines. Notice in the example I just played, I'm not only mixing the various shell voicings in different spots of the guitar neck for our C major 7 chord, but I'm also throwing in another critical element that Jim Hall and Joe Pass always used. This is a shell voicing for E minor 7 played over C major 7. This simple substitution is how the masters created such free-flowing harmony. So not only do we have all the variations of the C major 7 shell voicing around the neck, like I just showed, but we also now have any of the voicings for E minor 7 over C major 7. And you can also use A minor 7 over C major 7 as well. Interchanging between these related shell voicings is the first step to chordal freedom. You need to practice these various shell voicings around the neck like I just showed. And honestly, just practicing this concept will already start to create beautiful sounding chordal ideas. In that line that I just played, I also threw in another essential element that you must have: rhythm. Chordal and comping ideas sound best when paired with great rhythmic ideas. Rhythm is arguably the most important element of comping. One of the simplest ways to practice this is by using the swing phrase known as the Charleston. You just put your various shell voicings on top of this rhythm, you can't go wrong. But what players like Jim Hall and Joe Pass did is take this rhythm and start it on different beats other than just one. This is the true rhythmic secret of the masters. So think about it. What does it sound like if you start the Charleston on beat 2 instead of beat 1? Or how about beat 3? Or how about a combination of all of them mixed together? Practicing rhythm like this will take you a long way and make any chordal idea you play swing. If you want to dig deeper into this rhythmic concept, then make sure to check out the video linked in the corner of the screen. So now we have revealed 2 essential secrets that all the masters knew. But there is still more life that we can get out of these simple shell voicings. For example, let's look at this idea. Even though this might sound really complex, it's only adding 2 more elements into our shell voicing formula. First is chromaticism, moving into shell voicings chromatically, either 1 fret above or 1 fret below. You can get a lot of mileage out of this simple approach, which adds in some easy tension release inside our comping. The second element is creating small melody lines in the notes around our shell voicing. So take our C major shell voicing like we've been working on in this lesson. Try and look for diatonic notes either above one of your shell voicings or below them. Moving both of these notes around can create beautiful sounding comping lines without overthinking it. As you practice this concept with different shell voicings, you'll find ways to move the notes that are easier and work better for you than others. You don't have to master every movement of every shell voicing with this. Just find what works for you and use that. The last concept I want to cover for this lesson expands the chord substitution idea that we introduced earlier, where E minor 7 and A minor 7 will also work over C major 7. So now for a minor chord, like our E minor 7 for example, we could play a major chord from the 3rd of that minor chord, or another minor chord from the 5th of our chord. For a dominant chord like G7, for example, we could play a minor shell voicing from the 5th of our dominant chord, or a major shell voicing from the flat 7 of that dominant chord. Now keep in mind that these substitutions are for non-altered dominant chords, and for altered dominant chords, they would have different substitutions, which we won't cover in this lesson. These are the most common and widely used substitutions that will give your chordal ideas much more freedom, which combined with everything else we have covered in this lesson, creates a complete comping vocabulary. So for the D minor part, we have a minor shell voicing off the 5th, right? Chromatic into it. Then our normal shell voicing up to the F, right? And then we got chromatic down. Then for the G7, we have a shell voicing from the flat 7, the F, right? Then we go to D minor, then there's our G7 shell voicing, and then we go to the one with the 7 on the top. And then for the C major part, we have our C major 7 shell voicing, going to the E minor, and then we have the A minor, going back to the C major. So thinking this way is how the masters got so much out of so little, which is why they use these concepts to create their own sound and style. This is just one small part of learning jazz chords on the guitar, but it is an indispensable foundation to truly understand and play larger, more complex chords. If you want to dig into more comping and more chord material, I highly recommend checking out my comping etudes over on Patreon that give you a blueprint on how to comp over various styles and tunes. You can find the link for that below. Thank you so much for watching this video about shell voicings. If you want more comping videos, then I'll link some related videos in the video description below that you might find useful and enjoyable. Also remember to go over to Patreon to find that bonus etude talking about how to put shell voicings into your playing, and I give you a really great roadmap for that with that etude. I highly recommend it. Also, I want to give a shout out to the Patreons that make this possible. Without you all, none of this would exist, and I truly appreciate your support. Thank you. All right, that's it for this lesson. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to always keep swinging.